Mediabase, the amazing program for radio and for record companies, but we're going to talk about radio only. Let's get to it. Hey Buckaroos, welcome back to Musicom Academy. Today we're going to be talking about Mediabase. It's the program that really helps programmers and also helps music companies, record companies, to be able to analyze their songs, but we're going to skip that side of it and really concentrate on all the stuff for programming. And there's an enormous amount of it. It's not free. You do have to buy it as either a radio station or a chain. Usually chains buy it, for all of their radio stations, and and it's on a yearly basis, usually ongoing. So if it's you're a decent sized company, you're going to buy it for all your radio stations, and you're just going to keep it going for years and years and years. They only really do North America with the data. However, as I'm going to show you when I do a couple of these lessons, that if you were in Africa or the Middle East or in Europe or some other continent, you're still going to get a lot of use out of this, because it's going to show you rotations. It's going to show you literally the wording on liners and promos of what stations use. It shows you essentially the clocks. I mean, they don't look like clocks. They're all linear. They're all like a list format. If you were in Germany at the moment and you wanted to buy it, for a year, I don't know if they sell it to you for that, but I would assume that they would. Anyway, that's enough of the sales piece. I just think it's a really great program, and as a matter of fact, it's even better than I thought it was when I've actually started to go through it. So let's take a deep dive into it, and I'll show you some of the things that it has. When you first open up Mediabase, this is what you're going to encounter, the main menu, and it's an app, but it basically it's a website that's doing all this behind the scenes. So, and these are the things that you can get to deal with. So I'm just going to go across the top, because I'm not going to do them all, because we would be here forever. If we start over from the left-hand side, you got daily and real time, and what that means is they're pretty much doing the same thing, except that one is in real time. In other words, they're going to update this as it's happening. And then the other is something that's already been taped and in the can, and then it's been done, and you can go back. Like, let's just say, here, daily log. I'll give you an example. So there's a radio station in Detroit, WNIC. So if you didn't want that particular day, let's just pick a day here. How about June 14th? And you ask and say, give me, what did they do? Well, here's what they did. So starting at midnight throughout the entire day, this is their log, just as if you're looking at it when you were in the control room. And just an example, 4 o'clock they played Elton John, then Beyonce, then Bon Jovi, then they did a spot break. And the spot break, 8 minutes, 30 seconds. Commercials and recorded promos, ooh, that's a long one. But you know what? It's the only one this hour. That's interesting. See, this is the stuff you can find when you go looking. Like I haven't opened this particular page, so this is all new to me, just like it is to you, and things are jumping out at me. 1 break, afternoon drive, interesting. And then, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, then 11 songs in a row, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 songs in a row between here and there, until they come to another break, which is an 8-minute break. You get to see their logs, and you can get to pick apart, exactly what's going on. So like 8 a.m., here's the years, here's how much gold, recurrence, gold, currents, 1 current, that's it. Let's go to this hour. What hour is this, 9 a.m.? 1 recurrent, 2 currents, all the rest are gold. And these are the years of the gold, so you get a feel for the eras that they're playing from, although if you don't want to actually look at this and count it up, mornings are 17 current, midday 11 current, afternoon drive is 12, 13 current. That's nights. Nights are 12. So they're more current in mornings than the other day parts. That's actually a little different. Usually it's kind of sometimes the other way around. All right, let's go to the vintage analysis, which they also kind of rack through for you. So here's where they're playing the songs. Obviously, being current, they're playing a lot of songs that are 2021, even though it's 2022, because everything moves slowly for an AC station. There's that, and you look at the more current years, but then you look back when you go into the 80s, and you can see that, oh, they're bagging those, much more than, as a percentage, than the other years. Songs per hour. 9 a.m. 13, now that's something in itself to think about if you're new to programming. If you're going to go into midday, usually people start showing up at the office at around 8, 8:30, somewhere in there, if they're in the office, in this day and age, and not at home. If you want to catch those people and lock them in for the midday, you want to do something different at that 9 o'clock hour, like have way less commercials or no commercials and play a lot of music. And, oh, I love this radio station. And then pretty much they probably aren't going to change it right on through the day. Most played songs, Take On Me 2 times, and The Cold Heart, Elton John, Dua Lipa 5 times. Obviously these are currents in here, so they're going to get a little bit more. And the rest are 2s. So you can make it a pretty easy assumption that any other song is only playing 1 time during the day. So these are getting hit, at least on this day, definitely more than normal where the 2s are. And the 3, 4, 5s are probably some sort of a current, recurrent type thing. Let's go to most played gold, recurrent, and currents. So these are the currents. Look at the recurrents only. And then, of course, the gold. This is alphabetical by artist, which can be really helpful if you kind of want to look at a radio station and try to get an idea of, particularly if you look at this over a bunch of days, like if I happen to hit the 7-day thing. So obviously, like, say the Backstreet Boys, they're playing 4 of these, and these are the 4. Now, they all look equal here, but if you look at an entire week or even a longer stretch of time, you might all of a sudden, I Want It That Way might end up being like it's been played like 9 times, and 1 for this one, 3 for that one, 1 for that one. You can go, okay, that's probably their power gold. Tough to tell on, looking at this particular one, because it's only 1 day. Let's go back and we'll look at daily chart. This is going to be for the panels that they have. So this is all radio stations, in the US. These are published panels which are by format. This is a published Canadian panel, and this is all the stations that are in Canada. So, which is mainly what they serve, Canada and the US. So all stations US, all stations in Canada, published, published. If I hit published panel, you then now get more choices. You see AC right here, but okay, here's a whole bunch of different formats. What format do you want to look at? What do you know? What are you programming? Or what do you don't know and you're trying to bone up on? So let's take one that's maybe different for you. I don't know that all that much about alternative. We'll take alternative. These are the big songs from their panels. Now their panels have a whole bunch of specific alternative format radio stations that are in the panel. Later on, I'll show you how you can make your own panel, and you can pick and choose the stations that you want for any format to make any kind of panel you want, which is super powerful. You might want to take a panel of AC radio stations that sound a particular way, that are doing real well, that you like, and try to marry that also with a panel that has urban AC radio stations that you really like, that are also doing really, really well. As an example, maybe you might want to say, let's do Coast and I'll do the Wave in LA. I really love the Wave, and personally I do. I love the Wave. It's a great radio station. But Coast is really good too. So if I was in some market where I wanted to sort of emulate the Wave, but maybe I didn't want to go so far as being the Wave, because maybe there's already a really strong urban station in the market, but I wanted to sort of step in between that urban station and an AC station because there's enough room there, I might want to build a radio station that's somewhere in between the Wave and Coast. And you could do that on your own by making your own particular panel so that you could compare the 2 stations and maybe even a few more stations that are similar. In an ideal world, you'd have maybe 3 stations that are pretty similar to the Wave and then 3 other ones that are very similar to Coast, and put those 2 together and look at them. You can't just sort them together and hope that a station's going to show up. That's just not going to work, but you will be able to see them, what each side is sort of doing, and then say, what can I do and what can I grab from each side and build a whole new radio station? Clearly you can see these are the big songs. Toxic, that's been #1 every single day here in ranking of play, and here's the actual spins against all of these radio stations. Let's go back and I'll show you the gold, and then we'll move on. Gold, still have alternative there. You can see here, I don't know if I'd use it all that much, but it's nice to have that you can look at it. See this song here, Lovely the Band? It was the #19 song played on Wednesday, but on Thursday it kicked up on obviously a whole bunch of stations and it jumped into the top 10. You can kind of see that this thing is moving and coming up. If I was going to try to use this page, I mean, there's a lot of other pages that are way more helpful, I think, or easier to discern depending on what you're looking at, but I think I just look at the spins. I would sort on spins and see which ones came to the top, and these would probably be the big gold. Yeah, for sure. Killers, Mr. Brightside, absolutely. I mean, on this format, that's going to be a power gold. And Broken and Jimmy Eats World in the middle, and all that sort of stuff. You just kind of look at those numbers and go down a ways, and probably the power gold comes down to somewhere around in here. Let's jump to another one. Here's the 7-day. Ooh, a lot of tabs here. Let me jump over here. And they just explain this. I don't even have to go through this. This is, if I go to archived and you wanted to see what's in there, here's the year-end charts, essentially. You can get it by station, you can get it by artists, you can get a song analysis, songs by format. This is nice because if I would hit that, you'd get the entire year's worth of play by format, which if you wanted to go alternative, what are the songs? These are going to be clear as a bell, what the big ones are. And this is the custom area where you can actually play one station off another when you do peer comparisons, either a few stations, compare a bunch of them, like 5, 6, 7, or just one or two. You can take stations head to head, change your dates, playlist percentages of a bunch of stations that you're comparing. And in here, which again, I'll show you specifically how to do this. This is where you would make your custom panel of any way you want it to be. Let's go back to the 7-day. A lot of this is for record companies, and I'm going to skip that. But then here there's station playlists, there's artists by station, spins per week analysis, the gold recurrent and current analysis, station spin grid, and format saturation. I'm not really sure what station spin grid is, so we're going to be finding this out together. Let's hit this and see what it does. Okay, so we have to pick a song here. All right, so how about Levitating? Okay, did I spell it right? Yeah, hopefully. Levitating, where's Dua Lipa's version? Okay, there we go. So let's hit OK for that. I'll have to pick a station. That's how WLTW, that probably would be in there. Oh, you can go to the formats. Great. All right, so let's just say AC. Fantastic. Station and AC, WLTW. Okay, New York, and hit OK. Number of weeks, 5. Let's just go back maybe to this week and submit and see what we get. Wow, you got a lot of information here. Look at that, midnight to midnight, basically. One spin, and there it is at 7 o'clock at night. Here's another one at 7 o'clock at night. And one at 3, one at 12, one at 10. Now, you can do this in Music Master or Selector, but I mean, what immediately jumped out to me for this week here is, if this song is going to come around and play at night, I do not want this thing to play in the exact same hour if it's only going to be 2 times in the week. I'd want it once at 7 and another time in one of these other hours, any one of the other hours, anything but 7. The rotation seemed to be fine in all these other ones, probably a fluke or something, but it's one of those things you're going to be looking for. And airplay trends, let's just see what that does and then we'll move on. I'm curious because I'm learning this just like you. A graphed version. Okay. Let's go back to 7-day and a gold recurrent analysis. We use a panel and we will take a typical panel and let's use the AC panel. These are all of the radio stations that Mediabase has built into their AC panel. These are all of them. Now again, when you want to do a custom, you can leave out a lot of them. Like you may not want, these AC stations in Modesto or Portland or Colorado Springs. You may only want just the majors. Or, like I had mentioned in some earlier lessons, when you take over a new station as a PD, particularly if you don't know the format, it's really good to pick 3 really strong, large radio stations, ones in major markets, like, say, Coit in San Francisco, Coast in LA, and some other station in a really large market, maybe this one in Seattle or another one in Houston, an AC that's successful, and add that into your custom panel of your own AC panel, and then pick 2 from media markets. So maybe it would be the Portland, or maybe it's like Memphis, or some other decent sized media market, And that way you got both going and then look at the whole thing as a group. Let me show you an easy example of stuff that you can do really quickly to get a handle on stuff. So I went into All Access and I was just looking at Nashville, and there's two country stations there, okay? There's WSIX and there's WSM, home of the Grand Ole Opry and stuff like that. And they're relatively close in the ratings. And just by looking at this, and you'd go, okay, there's two country radio stations, and isn't that great? They're pretty much neck and neck. Perhaps I should follow those. Unbeknownst to you, you may have a radio station that you've built, a country radio station that is fairly current leaning, or at least 50-50 or something like that. Now you look at the ratings for Nashville and you go, okay, I'm going to follow these two radio stations. They're going neck and neck, and the assumption might be that they're pretty much like yours and it's going to help you. However, really quickly you can see on Mediabase, like take a look at this, where they're not similar at all. These are two totally different radio stations. One leans current, and the other has virtually no currents on it. It's pretty much a gold radio station. There will be no way to tell that without digging into something like Mediabase or spending a lot of time listening to both of these radio stations and trying to dig it out manually yourself. Let me show you something else on here which is pretty cool. If you want to be one of those all Christmas music stations, like a typical AC station, there's usually one in every market, but there may not be one in your market. If I wanted to find out what a typical really good all Christmas radio station does, do they ramp up? Do they just hit it and go 100% Christmas music? What do they do? What do they say? A whole bunch of things that are intertwined with that. And again, what do they play? What music? How would I find all that out? I mean, that's a lot of tedious work manually to try to dig that out. But let me show you on Mediabase, you can find that stuff really easily, right down to literally how they sell it on the air with liners and promos and that stuff. First off, if we're going to be the all Christmas station, there's going to be a few questions we're going to need to answer. And one of them would start with, well, when do we start this whole thing? Do we do it right after Thanksgiving? Do we do it on December 1st? Do we do it sometime in November? The other thing is, what do we play? We need a list of songs. We need the gold, and we need any currents that might be out there. Not very many of those, but if they are, we'd want to know what they are. Next up would be, well, what are the power songs within all of those songs that we're going to try to get a list for? So hopefully we can maybe pull up 400 or 500 songs. And then from the amount of spins that everybody plays of the particular format, we're going to do AC because that's who usually does the all Christmas thing. And then that turns into, well, how many of those songs do we play per hour? The questions are endless. They just keep going. And then finally, well, what do you say? How do you sell it? What do you do on the air? Like, can I have a few examples of that sort of thing? So let's start there because that's the easiest one. First up, you go to tuned in monitors, and that'll bring up some years. And obviously you can't do 2022 because Christmas hasn't started yet. Let's go to 21 and we'll submit this, see what happens. Now, these are the stations that they did as monitors, for each of the days. A different day, different station, and so forth. Now, we're going to be looking for an AC radio station that's obviously before Christmas, and we'll see if they are a Christmas radio station. Let's try this one, NTR. It's on the 8th of December. Not sure if this is a Christmas, no, this is not a Christmas station. Okay, cool, we'll go back again. What else we got here? Another Indianapolis, AC, and WYXB. December 1st, that should be okay. We'll see if this is a Christmas station. And yes, it is. This is most definitely a Christmas radio station. So how do you sell it? Well, just by looking at this, you can see this is 146 times they've said these things in different places. These are IDs, they're splitters, over music beds, in between sweeps, in between the Christmas songs, and so forth. Everything is here. Indy's Christmas Station, B1057. Rocking Around the Christmas Tree with Indy's Christmas Station, B1057. Clearly, that is the cell line, Indy's Christmas Station, B1057, with ideally a million ways to say it. Looking down here, they actually lean into the station's overall image, which is the best variety of the 80s, 90s, and today. This is pretty smart too, because if you just look at this one, they're telling you what they do, They're telling you what they're doing right now, Christmas station, holidays, music, all that sort of stuff. But they're also telling you that the regular station will return after they get done with the holiday music. So this is not a weird freak thing. This is just a one-time special that they're doing around Christmas, and then they go back to the norm. I think most people would know that by now, because the stations have been doing this for decades. But certainly in the beginning, you had to do this because, like, what just happened to my radio station? It's all Christmas. What's going on? You might as well tell people that, limited time offer, buy it now. And they're making a sell to hold somebody, because Christmas music stations, when they're all Christmas, they get a huge amount of cume coming in that normally is not there. In other words, new listeners. Oh, what's that Christmas station? Let me listen to that. Let us be your new radio station in the new year. Basically, this is what we play, 80s, 90s, and today. And as soon as we're done with the holiday music, we'll be into it. So, again, not to beat this into the ground, but it's all here, what you'd want to say and how you'd want to deal with it. You just got to dig through it. All right, let's go back to the main menu and daily and daily logs. And we'll pick out WLTW because I know they do Christmas music and we do not want this date. Let's pick a different date and let's take something that's in November. I could take the easy one and go right after Thanksgiving, which would be the 26th, but maybe they go a little bit earlier here. So let's choose maybe the 18th. We'll go a week ahead of it and see what they do. I have no idea what they're going to be doing here. Okay, so Michael Jackson, Rock With You. Obviously, this isn't Christmas music. So it's not on the 18th. Let's do the 19th. Not on the 19th. 20th? Christmas music. So they have started holiday music, Christmas music on the 20th of November. Is it every single cut? Yeah, it's 100% Christmas music, as you would sort of expect in this day and age. Most stations go right at it and try to, own it. And you can kind of catch that by doing this. Okay, well, this is any kind of current thing. This is probably like 1 or 2 songs. All the rest is gold stuff. Core artists, you can look through if you want to get a little bit better feel for it. Bing Crosby and Michael Bublé, the most amount of songs. Andy Williams next, and Amy Grant, and down the line. Songs per hour, there's going to be a lot because Christmas music, by definition, is usually older songs, which we'll look at in just a second, and they tend to be shorter, way smaller, so you're going to be playing more. Like here this hour, they're doing like 17 songs, 16 songs, 1 o'clock. 16 songs, at noon. I mean, you don't normally get them up that high. So let's look at the vintage analysis and see what's there. So you can see in 2020 down to like 2012, there's not a whole lot of songs. This is where the brunt of the songs start to kick in. They're back in here. They're literally in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. These are really the classic songs. And then you'd get Mariah Carey somewhere in the 90s. I forget what year. Somewhere. I want to say like 1994 or 93, somewhere in there, All I Want for Christmas Is You. And, and that gets banged pretty heavily. But beyond that, it's pretty slim pickings for, more recent Christmas songs that matter. I mean, this is 2001 and there's hardly any here. Let's go do a different one and see what another station will do. Let's pull the daily logs up one more time. This time I'm going to go for another station that I know does it. It's WNIC in Detroit. They tend to go a little earlier, as I recall. It's been a while now, but let me just start on the 1st, November 1st. I'm sure they probably don't, but hey, you never know. Okay, normal music. Next day, 2nd, normal music, normal music, normal music, normal music. Okay, Christmas. What day is this? This is the 6th. WLTW started it on the 20th. This is like 2 weeks earlier. And, the next question would be, are they doing it, 100%? And yes, they are. Let's see how many songs they're playing per hour. It should be roughly the same. It is 16, 17. Actually, they're playing even a little bit more music. And vintage analysis, where's that look? They're playing stuff a little bit more from 2012, 2011. 2007, so they got a little bit more recent stuff in there, between 2001 and now. Probably doesn't amount to a whole lot of songs, but they are playing them. The brunt of the stuff is all back in here. On WLTW, the core artist getting pounded the most was Bing Crosby and Michael Bublé. Here it's Ray Conniff and Amy Grant and Crosby. Where's Buble? Buble's down kind of mid-pack. Okay, next question. What kind of songs are we playing here? Where do we go for those? So we need a gold library and any currents or recurrents that happen to be able to fit this, okay? Let's go to 7-day, go to holiday music, and mainstream AC, that's what we want. Currents only or recurrents only or all or gold. I'm going to start with gold. And how many gold do we want? Well, I want to see as many as we can. So I'm going to choose 1,000. It probably won't go that high, but let's just see. Is there a lot here? Oh, yeah. Now, I want to point something out to you. I'm doing this, if you see this date, I'm doing this on June 28th of 2022. This date is Christmas Day, so it's counting Christmas Day and stopping, okay? And it's all of the mainstream AC radio stations in the country, in the United States. And this is only the gold. This is a really strong number right here to me. And this is this week and last week. Now, this week is obviously Christmas week. This week is the week before Christmas. So, you know, I would say as you look through here, you're not going to see a whole lot of numbers where they're dramatically different between Christmas week, you know, and the week before, unless maybe some stations might push up traditional music, you know, that's sort of, you know, into the gospel range or hymn range or that type of stuff. They might add a little bit more and be more lenient in that in the week leading up to Christmas. So I'm going to just ignore this week, last week. I'm just not going to care about that. I'm going to be looking over here for just a second. I'll show you why. Let me just look over here because I don't really care about the all-night show. I want to look at mornings, midday, and afternoons and see how these are being split out. So let's look at mornings and then look at this list. When I resort this, what does it look like? Maybe it'll look exactly the same. Pretty similar, except McCartney pops up here, Ronettes pop up here, Dean Martin shows up, Lennon shows up, Gene Autry shows up. Okay, let's move to midday. Bobby Helms on top, then comes Burl Ives, Andy Williams. Midday is and Brenda Lee. Midday is looking a little bit more traditional because Mariah Carey and Wham dropped down just a little bit. Not a lot, but you know, Dean Martin is coming up. Trans-Siberian Orchestra all of a sudden in midday. This is looking like middays as a whole. They're leaning a little bit more traditional during midday. Now let's go to afternoon drive. Similar, but I'd say it's a little bit more in between. No, you know what? It actually looks like midday to me. Let's do nights here. That looks sort of similar to me also. I don't know if you've noticed it watching this, but what came to the top, well, let me go back to the original thing here. If you look, just stare at Wham for a second. Wham on midday, afternoon drive, and nights has been somewhere down in this range, okay? When you go to the overall, does anything look sort of, for these songs right here, does anything look similar to any of these? Morning drive, they all have tempo. Every one of these songs has tempo. Somebody's either programming that on all these stations, looking for that, or since there's not maybe a lot of songs being played on the morning show, the computer is picking the fast ones because it can, or it's set up to play the fast ones. I just want to run you through some thinking and some things that you should be looking for because there's a ton of things to see on here. And there's also a ton of things, particularly if you're a new PD and you're dealing with something, there's a lot of nuance going on that you, at first blush, you go like, well, okay, there's a bunch of songs there. But there's a lot more going on than maybe that you see, and I'm trying to point it out for you to look for it, okay? All right, let's go back to, this is the overall list, and again, this is 30 on the page. So let's just take it down to 30. Let me just highlight that so I know where 30 is. And we have 28,226. Okay, what's half of 28,000? It's 14,000 something. Okay, so let's just go down somewhere into the 14,000 range. Woo, that you don't have to go very far beyond that to get there. Huh. Wow, 14,000 is kind of here. What is that? 32, 4, 6, 36. Okay, well, let's hold that thought for 1 second and let's talk this through. 6 a.m. to midnight is 18 hours. 18 and 18 is 36. You could play 2 of these songs per hour, every single hour, and they would repeat once a day. I think I would want to push this up maybe to 3 per hour, maybe even 4, but let's just, let's not go crazy with it and just push it up to 3 per hour. If you were doing that, you got 18, 18 and 18 is 36, another 18 is 54, so that'd be 54 songs, but at the moment you only have 36.
So let's take this out to maybe, I don't know, 44, 45. Let's take it down a little bit. Wait, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 42, 44, 46. What kind of song does this look like? Johnny Mathis, Sleigh Ride. See, this is where taste starts to come in. Like, I would think I would maybe skip Sleigh Ride, or definitely Percy Faith. I would be skipping that. Instead, I'd go for Taylor Swift, Christmas, Baby Please Come Home, Mariah, Lady Antebellum, Holly Jolly Christmas. I'd start picking from this list and try to end up with maybe 44, 45, 46 songs. Let's roughly figure out how many songs per hour that we're going to play. So let's just do this. Let me just throw this in here, only because you can see what's going on. I mean, I can sort of ballpark it. That's not going to do you any good watching this, okay? So let me go through this. There's 18 hours that we care about, 6 a.m. to midnight, and I just did 3 different rows. This is if we played 2 an hour. This is if we played 3 an hour. This is if we played 4 per hour of these Power Christmas Golds. And what do they amount to? 2 times 18 is 36, 3 is 54, 72. That's where these numbers are coming from. Now, we sort of pretty much said, well, roughly we're going to probably have 46 songs that we're going to consider a Power Gold in this instance, that we're going to pound pretty heavily. Again, you can make this number any number you want. You can take it higher or lower, speed it up, slow it down, that kind of thing. I'm just going to pick 46 to show you what's going on. So if I then sort of just do a little division and go, okay, I got 46 songs, when I'm going to divide it by, but I'm only going to play 36. That's where I'm getting those from. I have 46 songs total, but if I only play 2 an hour, I'm only going to use up 36 of them. What does that look like? Well, it looks like basically 1 day and 0.2778 as a remainder. Well, what does that amount to? Well, it's 23 hours, but we only care about 18 hours. So essentially we have 1 day and an extra 5 hours before it starts to repeat again. Now let me just drag this formula down and see what it does. Okay, so if we play 3 an hour, they're repeating every 15 hours. That's totally fine, 15-hour repeat. We're only going to play these for a month or a month and a half. Even this one isn't bad, 11 hours. I mean, 11 hours is, in the scheme of things for this, we're not doing it for, years on end. It's just going to be for a month and a half. This is kind of fine at 11. I think I'd probably just do 3 though, because it's 20 minutes apart and there's other good songs. Plus, one of the things you're going to have to deal with if you're doing Christmas songs is you may have, like Last Christmas, great example actually. Last Christmas, you have the Wham song, but if you're really pounding that a lot, then other versions of that by other people, like Taylor Swift and a few others, all of a sudden they're going to have a hard time coming up. So, and the song is great sort of on its own, almost regardless of who does it. That's another thing with these songs. A lot of them are just super classic songs. It doesn't really matter who sings them. They're going to, they're going to resonate. So I'd lean on 3. Let's go back to the original question and for holiday music. And are there any currents? Was we skip that? Any currents and recurrents? And let's just get a list of those. Probably 150 is probably going to be plenty. What do we got? Okay, so they're giving us a list of currents. These are the ones with numbers, and then if you go down, you're going to start to see recurrents. And these are what you'd start to choose from. And I would, do pretty much sort of the same math. And maybe I don't think I'd go beyond 1 recurrent per hour, because even though these are recurrents, they're not anywhere near as strong as those gold songs. But that's just me. I'd lead on to the gold and maybe a few of the currents, or mix them together and just say, what are the, I think I'd probably maybe say, here, give me 25 or 20 of these really good songs, and I play 1 per hour, and all the rest would be gold. Sort of in line with a regular AC programming, really, as you've seen. I've shown you a bunch of times, most stations do 1 recurrent, 1 current, maybe 2 currents, and the rest is all gold. So you wouldn't be too far from that. So to answer all those questions, did we do those? When to start? Yes, we did. The number of songs of gold and what are they? We did that. How do you pick out the powers? Went through that. And how many per hour? We ended up with 3 of those. And how do you sell it? So that was the first thing we looked at with all of the liners and the promos.
As I mentioned in the beginning, this is an amazing program, and if you can afford it for your radio station or for your company, by all means, I would recommend that you buy this thing. I was actually thinking, like, how would you get this information? It must cost Mediabase like a monstrous small fortune. in order to do this, because I could see where you could do it sort of digitally, with algorithms and things like that to maybe get the music, because there's a waveform there, and just like YouTube catches stuff, if you put a song up, they'll catch the copyright. But for the liners and what people are saying and actually basically transcribing that into real words, it's like, how would you do that? It would seem like you'd have to have people monitoring 24/7 what's actually being said on radio stations. I mean, that's mind-boggling when you think of how much work that is. And again, if you pay for this and you buy it, how much work you do not have to do. We're going to go through a couple lessons using this Mediabase for specific things, two ways. One is, I don't know anything about a format whatsoever, and I'm going to use Mediabase to try to ramp me up to the point where I've got a reasonably decent radio station as a starting point for a format that I know nothing about. That's one. And then I'm going to go back in and do it again, pretty much the same thing, except this time I actually do know the format really, really well. So I can tweak even more and cut categories even more precisely and stuff like that than I could, when I don't know the format. Because when you don't know a format and you don't have any history of the music and you don't know if anything's new or old or all of that stuff, you're really at a disadvantage. This program levels the playing field. So hope that helps. Hope these new lessons coming up about this will help you even more. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and all of that usual stuff, and we will see you next week. See ya!